Welcome back, everyone. It's the South End Zone. I'm Chad. He's Tyler. It is time to get into the nitty gritty, Tyler. And before we do that, because we have a lot of games to cover, there's a lot of stuff with playoff implications this weekend, as you well know. We want to remind everybody to like, to share, and to subscribe. Hit the comments. Get in there. Let's get gritty now because everybody who's been talking shit, now we get to talk shit back at you. And everybody else, it's time to start getting shit talked at you anyway. So let's get into it, Tyler. Let's start with we did a show. If you want to watch the full breakdown of this game, go back to our previous episode. We did this the day after the game, but Georgia surviving that 8 overtime nail biter, heart attack dogs against Georgia Tech. How are you feeling coming down off of that one, man?
It feels great. Shout out Dan Jackson. Shout out CJ Allen. Shout out, dude, the greatest clip in possibly the history of college football came from that. So Levitt scored the last 2 touchdowns of regulation to tie it.
Right.
And there's just a slow-mo clip of Cass Jones hitting like the between the legs celly, and as he like taps Lovett's helmet, like the fireworks go off.
Fireworks go off in the
It's
background.
the most perfect thing and it's the framing. Whoever was able to take that video, shout out to you. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
That just like gets I watched it 1,000 times because it's literally so perfect. Taps the helmet, fireworks in the stadium go off. It was beautiful. Honestly, like mad shout out. I don't know how Georgia Tech is 7-4. It's beyond me.
Yeah.
I know they beat Miami, but I wasn't there. They lost to Notre Dame, but I don't know. I feel good about it. Shout out Dan Jackson. Dude, Georgia finds the gems with the walk-ons, man. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
And shout out Nate Frazier, freshman. Shout out Carson Beck for not screwing it up. And Arian Smith, need to see you in our office later today.
And listen, you got to give a shout out to Mike Bobo because
he
came up with enough plays on 2-point conversions to actually get you guys some scores to win.
We all did the craziness like Georgia Tech did the swinging gate, took the entire offensive line out, and then we did some craziness too. And then the game winner was a 3-yard run up the middle.
Hey, look, sometimes simple gets it done, and when it's just that's one of those things where it's like, look, guys, y'all ready to win this? Let's go home.
Yeah, let's go home.
We are home, but let's stay home. Anyway, speaking of being at home, guess who didn't lose to Vanderbilt or Oklahoma? LSU. I don't understand. Like I'm torn. This was like fun to watch because I like to see my team win, and also very frustrating because it reminded me of what could have been. Because if you don't crap the bed in Vegas in the season opener against USC, if you don't let it all get away from you in College Station, and you actually finish the job against Texas A&M, and Nussmeier doesn't throw 3 picks, and you know how to recognize that the quarterback is never giving the ball up when they bring Marcel Reed in, you're sitting there with maybe 2 losses. And then like the Alabama thing. So here's what's crazy. We talked about this after you guys lost to Alabama, and you see them lose to Vanderbilt the week after. Watching Alabama lose to Vanderbilt earlier in the year and then just completely dunk us at home. And then they go and lose like they did, scoring only 3 points against this Oklahoma team that LSU just hung 5 touchdowns on. I can't help but wonder, like, if LSU plays Alabama after that Oklahoma loss, because I can't help but think that some of what happened in Tiger Stadium a few weeks ago was that standard. We're playing them in November. They're finally getting their shit together. They have 2 weeks to prepare, yada, yada, yada. And then LSU just still has like this PTSD of all the saving years and all the ass beatings. The vulnerability that I see in Alabama now, because you even saw it with Auburn. Like we talked about how this game has been like a 3, 4, 5 touchdown blowout in Tuscaloosa the last 20 years, except for the Cam Newton game. This Alabama team is just like pedestrian as hell. And they're living on reputation and getting teams like LSU and Georgia. And look, say what you want to say, Alabama fans, we get it. Like, we both lost to Alabama. I understand.
We admit that fully. We understand.
We admit that our teams are flawed enough that that's
And
what happened.
we're not
And
disciplined enough to tackle Jalen Milroe.
right. And neither are we.
Yeah.
But you have got to recognize the fact that, like, you lost by 3 touchdowns. You only scored a field goal against an Oklahoma team that has 2 wins in the SEC this year. 2. And granted, like, this team's probably better than their record indicates. But LSU beat them by 3 touchdowns. It wasn't even close. And that was with Garrett Nussmeier missing like 2 possessions because we thought he had broken his shoulder. And then he comes out, and I don't know what they shot him up with, but the dude just like lit it up. And then Chris Hilton learned how to run through the ball. He jumped anyway for the first touchdown, and he still caught. He jumps for the ball, and it hits him in the crotch. Like, stop jumping. Anyway, but Chris Hilton gets 2, deep balls for touchdowns. Caden Durham goes crazy. I read something that allegedly Oregon is like trying to offer him $1.5 million or something like that to come to Oregon, Caden Durham, and I'm like, I don't see that doesn't make any sense. That's a lot of money for
That is a
uh,
lot.
a freshman running back who's now granted he's very dynamic, he's very fast, he's powerful, all that stuff. I don't think LSU uses him like they should, and maybe that's where he would benefit from something like playing for Oregon or someone else. But $1.5 million is a lot. So anyway, but I digress. LSU gets it done, wraps up the season in 8-4 fashion,
Hey.
after starting off very ugly. But here's the thing: 8-4 for LSU is a disappointment. It is a massive disappointment. The kind of thing that gets people like Brian Kelly, if not fired, on the chopping block, at least
Which
having people
I think he
talking
still
about.
is.
Yeah, people talking about when do we have the real conversation about getting rid of Brian Kelly? Like, when do we start talking about the buyout and these sorts of things? And losing Bryce Underwood, although we now that we know Dave Portnoy bought him with the help of like the second richest person in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife, who apparently went to Michigan and was just like, we need a quarterback. And so now Bryce Underwood just took the money and is going to Michigan. All right, whatever, that's cool. Enjoy your money. Michigan still sucks and can't throw the ball downfield, but we're going to get into them in a little bit. But that recruiting class that was number 1 in the country is now falling. Is number 6. We'll see if Derek Meadows still maintains his commitment. We'll find out in a couple of days whether that LSU recruiting class is going to be mostly intact and how much rope does Brian Kelly have. But that's what happens when LSU goes 8-4, is you talk about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I
One
mean,
team
that's
that 8-4 is kind of their peak, their limit,
it's their
is
mean.
Texas 8-4.
It's their mean.
It's no, it's not their mean. It is like their limit.
Yeah,
That's
that's true.
they get there, and then that's kind of like, oh, it's like when you're playing Madden or college football or something like that, and like you're playing like the highest level, all pro, all Madden,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and you're up by 3 touchdowns, and somehow that's when like your all your linemen start holding, and
Mm-hmm.
your running back just fumbles the ball for no reason, and they do whatever they can to like regress to
Mm-hmm.
you being in a nail biter to where you've got to like execute perfectly on your last
Yeah.
possession, otherwise you're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
That's A&M. A&M regresses to, yeah, I guess so. So the mean is they're going to regress towards that mean. But what I'm saying is that when they start to get out ahead of their skis, and we
Yep.
called this, they were 7-1 after they beat LSU, and
Mm-hmm.
I said at that point, like, man, they're looking good, but I don't know. There's still a chance. 8-4 is still on the docket. Like, it can still happen. It's still alive and well. We kept chronicling it. They lost 3 out of 4 to cough it up
Yep.
and finish as Texas 8-4
Sure
because
did.
that's what they do. You're undefeated in the SEC going into the stretch run,
They had sole possession of number one in the
first place,
SEC. They had
and now
sole
they're like
possession.
8th.
Yeah, like they were they had sole possession, and and it comes to a point where I kind of feel like Kyle Field was jumping. They were, $1,000 tickets, and wow, are those cheers really weird? It's the
Yeah.
first time I've really heard it, like, legitimately, because they even put the words. It sounded like some 1950s cartoon. Who even knows what? Well, hey, whatever, man. Whatever
Well,
floats your
there's a
boat.
reason why.
Y'all
There's
seem
a
to
reason
enjoy
why when they
yourselves.
call them the Aggies, people put an F in front of that sometimes
Yeah, like,
because it's like that.
I mean, I listen. Place was jumping. Texas was right for the picking. Texas A&M, and was gifted many opportunities to try to make something. Marshall Reed was
Yeah,
actually like making throws downfield. It looked good doing it. So I was like, okay, let's do something here because I prefer to play Texas A&M. I don't want to. I mean, is what it is. We're gonna play Texas again, and we'll
yeah.
talk about that later in the week. But I mean, Marcel Reed looked good early, and
Mhm.
then it was close, and you have Arch
Well, but
Manning hit
it
the
was
edge.
17-0. It was 17
Yeah,
nothing, and
for
they're about
sure.
to go up 24-0, and instead it's a 100-yard pick six.
Hmm.
And then Texas drives down the field, and they're in the red zone again, and they turn the ball over again in
Yeah,
the
they
red zone.
stalled out. They gave you opportunities. Like they could have been up like 20, 27-7, 34-7 easily.
Yeah, yeah,
But like they were gifted opportunities, A&M, and they just didn't capitalize whatsoever.
because they're
And
Texas 8-4. That's
it's
why.
true. And I
That's what they
just
do.
and I mean, this game that has not been played. I'm so glad this game is back. I know Texas state legislation tried to make this game legally required, which I
Right.
think is crazy. For the
Crazy.
last, I mean, hey, good for you. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that this is a new staple of rivalry weekend for
Hmm.
years to come, which is also awesome. But yeah, they get it done. Quinn Ewers, I know, like on one good leg, got it done. Shout out Arch Manning. He's definitely not Peyton Realized son, that's for sure.
Right, right,
Taking
right.
the corner and going to the pylon. Good for him.
Yeah, he's
Um,
he's Cooper's son, and he's
yep,
Archie's grandson. So
yep, that's for
people
sure.
forget what the actual lineage is, but
It's
everybody's not Peyton and Eli. Come on
yeah,
now.
yeah, for sure. No, but good for them. I mean, I think that Texas A&M could have made this a game. They didn't. Is what it is. And now we look to next Saturday for the SEC championship with a date with us in Texas.
Yeah, that's right, and it's a big one. I think the winner of that game is um, contending for the number one seed, depending on what happens with Penn State and Oregon. And I think the loser of that game is still in the playoffs. And if it's Texas, they might get a home game. They probably get a home game. If you guys
We
lose,
go on the
then
road
you're
for
probably
sure.
going on the road. Yeah, you're
That's
probably going on the
yeah.
road.
I'd say
Mhm.
and we'll talk about it. I say if we lose and they want to keep us in, we'll drop between 10 and 12.
If you
And
lose, you're not being it. I'm
yeah,
here to tell you, like, I think you're guaranteed a spot. What you're playing for now is like, do you get a first round bye, or
we're
are
going
you
on the
going
road.
to Happy Valley?
Dude, which I mean,
I
that's
know. I know you're probably like, I'm torn. On the one hand, I don't want to do that. On the other hand, I'm there, and I will
I
be
will be at
decked.
the game.
I will be decked out. Tyler will be naked in the stands, painted black and red.
It's like I will take my family's season tickets and I will stand up there in red and black.
That's right. That's right. Oh shoot. But yeah, so Texas gets it done. Texas gets to pretend like they can say, yeah, the SEC ain't shit. Yeah, except that, like, the one legacy SEC team you played that was actually good is Georgia, and they beat your ass, and now you got to play them again. Who you
In
beat
Atlanta.
was you beat a former Big 12 team, is what you beat in Texas A&M. So, like, you're still not that impressive because you beat a team that hasn't been able to even win the West Division since they joined the league,
Nope.
let alone win the SEC. So, like, you kind of beat, like, SEC light,
They've
when
beat
you beat
no
Texas A&M.
they've beat no conference division winners.
Correct.
At least
And
does Kentucky ever won the division? SEC East? We know Vandy has it.
no,
So hey,
Vandy
like,
hasn't.
yeah, I
Mhm.
don't think we've almost accidentally sent Kentucky to
Mississippi State did
oh yeah.
a while back. Mississippi State did win the West. That was in the ugly days of, like, that was like pre Saban,
Oh,
pre
that's like a while ago. Yeah.
It was a while back, like 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in that neighborhood. But anyway, the point being that if you look at Texas's schedule, like there somebody posted like it was actually an A&M fan that posted this,
Mhm.
but it was like, Texas says the SEC ain't shit, and it's like they show their schedule, and it's like there's this loss up at the top against Georgia, and then all of their wins are like literally all the last place teams in the SEC. It's like
Mhm.
the bottom six of the
Yep.
SEC. And then they beat Texas A&M, who is now what, like sixth, seventh, eighth in the conference. With that loss, they're right there with LSU and Alabama in that kind
They're
of
six. They dropped
multi-way
to
tie
six.
for. Well, right, but they're in a multi-way tie for sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, something like
Yeah,
that.
with y'all, SC, and Ole Miss and Mizzou all being 5 and
Missouri,
3 in the
right?
conference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not. It's still, look, Texas A&M is a good team. They got dudes, they got
Yeah.
athletes. But it's just funny. I'm going to gloat forever
Yeah.
that you're still Texas 8-4.
Your
We
team,
said
yeah.
we said you were Texas 8-4 until proven otherwise. You proved 8-4. You did not prove otherwise.
No,
So you're
seriously.
Texas 8-4, and we get to ride this donkey all the way through the offseason into next
Yep.
season. And then we get to shit talk you all next season until you aren't 8-4, which you're going to be 8-4 at best, because
And the
that's what you
crazy
do.
part is your roster is not 8-4 roster, and yet here we are.
Yeah, here we
Like
are.
here we are. Like you guys had it all in front of you. Even 9-4, really. If
Look,
y'all would have made it to
look,
Atlanta, 9 and
the
3 or
the
whatever the
the
hell.
peak for LSU is 15-0, best team in the history of the sport. The
Hmm.
peak for Texas 8-4 is Texas 8-4. That's it. That's your peak. You can say that your peak is went 9-1 or whatever in 2020 when everything was retarded. Half of LSU's roster sat out because you could sit out, and we had like dudes that were going in the draft. Like Jamar Chase sat out the whole season.
Hmm.
Like that, we're talking about like one of the best receivers in the NFL. Just said like I'm not playing. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Terrace Marshall, also drafted in the first round, sat out.
Hmm.
It's We are not the same, Texas A&M. So anyway, now we go from a team that was on top of the world and completely collapsed and fell apart in Texas 8-4 to the South Carolina Gamecocks, who are the hottest team in college football right now, going on the road to fake Death Valley. They beat Clemson. Look, Lenora Sellers, I don't know what to
Dude,
say, but they
Heisman
posted,
race.
South Carolina's Twitter account posted like
Yeah.
the SEC preseason rankings of quarterbacks. Lenora Sellers was 16th.
Well, I mean,
And
he's a
and Arch
freshman,
and
but
Arch and
still.
Arch Manning wasn't even on there. They just did like starters. So it was like
Yeah.
each school's quarterback, and they
He's
ranked
he's
Lenora
a
Sellers
freshman.
last. Yep.
I think it's going to be next 2 years and clip this, whatever, save this right here. Here we go. I mean, DJ Lagway and Lenora Sellers Heisman race over the next 2 years will be one of the best
Mm-hmm.
things to ever happen in SEC football.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the two of them for the next 2 years. They're both
And man,
freshmen and they're both insane.
if Bryce Underwood had just not flipped his
Oh.
commitment like an idiot, but it is what it
Well, he'll be a
is.
professional ball caddy from the center to the running back, from the center to the running back,
That's
professional
right.
ball
That's right.
caddy up there in Ann Arbor, whatever. Lenora Sellers and DJ Lagway for Heisman for the next 2 years, dude.
No.
And Beamer could not stop talking about how this kid's the best player in the country. Kid's just like he's legit, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope that. And Lenora Sellers, I know you definitely watch these videos. Don't let anybody buy you away from South Carolina. You could build
Right.
something so special there in Columbia,
Mm-hmm. No, he would be
Columbus.
a legend. He would be a legend
Yes.
there for the rest of his life.
Dude, you would be the greatest South Carolina quarterback of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go to Oregon or something like that, and
You have a yeah.
you first of all, the pressure that you will have on you will be insane because they're going to expect you to win a national championship. Otherwise, they're going to be like
Was he competing
talk,
with Connor Shaw
talking.
and Jeff Garcia?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, for the best.
Yeah.
Well, Spencer Rattler.
Spencer
Spencer.
Rattler, SC quarterback. I'm just saying, you
Who's that
quite literally
guy?
could be the best South Carolina quarterback of all time.
Yeah. Who's that guy? Steve Tannehill. That was not Ryan Tannehill, but Steve Tannehill. He was back in the late '80s. No, seriously, like
Okay.
LSU, we played them in the Gator Bowl in '87, '88, somewhere in there.
Okay.
and like we were both like, I think we ended up 10-1-1 that year, and they were like 10-1 also.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I don't even remember what conference South Carolina was in back then, but it was they were not in the SEC yet. So but yeah, so we move it over to Tennessee. But yeah, South Carolina. Let me go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
back. We
should
had more
move
to
on.
say.
Let's
We
go
had
back
more to
because we have
say.
a little more to say. South Carolina should be in the playoff,
Mm-hmm.
ahead of Ole Miss, ahead of Alabama. I think you could maybe make the argument for Ole Miss because Ole Miss actually beat them well, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, it was in Oxford. So like you think about it, like South Carolina had to go on the road to Oxford, on the road to Tuscaloosa,
Mm-hmm.
and they got beat, 27-3 by Ole Miss in Oxford, but they were right there with Alabama.
Without
They get an onside
Marsalis.
kick. They're actually like driving the ball downfield. They're trying to get into field goal range to kick a game-winning field goal late, and they threw a pick. So shout out to Alabama for getting it done. But the reality is that this South Carolina team is better than they have. Than I think the perception has been for this team. And when you factor in, people want to look at like, well, yeah, but Alabama beat them head to head. Okay, well then by that logic, uh, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt should be in the playoff ahead of Alabama because they beat them head to head. No, you have to also look at like the rest of the body of work, and winning by 2 against a team at home when you lost by 3 touchdowns to a crappy Oklahoma team, and you lost at home, or not at home, but you lost on the road to a Vanderbilt team that all the other good teams in the SEC have taken care of. LSU took care of them. Texas took care of them. Vanderbilt's good, but they're not that good that you can. You look at South Carolina's losses. They lost to LSU by a field goal. They lost to uh, Alabama by 2 on the road, and they lost to Ole Miss by 3 touchdowns on the road. That's it. Alabama lost by 3 touchdowns to Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the other thing is too, I know you're not supposed to technically look at this stuff this way, but the reality of the matter is you have to give some credence to, like, Lenore Sellers was hurt in the middle of the season, got hurt in the LSU game, played hurt, and then like missed a game or two, mixed in there, was not 100% for the Alabama game. Now that he is 100%, you see the results.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama, what happened? I don't know, but you look very mediocre even against Auburn, who you should have beaten by 4
Pedestrian.
touchdowns. And
Pedestrian.
you were super pedestrian in Norman at Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago. So to me, South Carolina belongs in the playoff. They belong in the playoff ahead of Miami for sure. They belong in the playoff ahead of Alabama. I could maybe make the argument that Ole Miss belongs in there ahead of them, because if you look at Ole Miss's, if you beat South Carolina 27-3 and you beat Georgia the way that they beat you guys, yeah, they lost at Florida in the swamp. Yeah, they lost at LSU. And what was their other loss?
Who?
Ole Miss. Who else did?
Uh,
Oh, Kentucky at home.
yeah, yeah, Kentucky.
That's
They
the
got
ugly
beat by
one. That's the
Kentucky.
spot. But again, that was like week 3, week 4.
Right.
So if you're looking at how they've played lately, it's a little bit different. And so I think we'll see how this championship weekend shakes out. But the chances are still there for the SEC to get 4 in. Definitely should get 3 in. I just hope that the committee gets this right and actually, and this is not just me hating on Alabama. The body of work says that South Carolina and Ole Miss should be in ahead of Alabama.
Yeah.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think South Carolina is like one of the best 3-loss teams in the country. Easily. They
Hmm.
proved it. And I just also just love them letting the chicken take a go to the
Drop
bathroom
a deuce on
on the
the
Clemson
Tiger logo.
logo. That's electric. Dude, this is one of the greatest rivalry weekends in all. This is why college will forever be better than the NFL, bar none. You got people. The flag planting is going to get outlawed in college football very
Yeah,
soon, and
that's no
fines.
doubt.
And they 4 different games that ended in fights because of that.
Hmm.
And then you got the people, and then and if it's not that, it's them like kicking the logo and scuffing up the logo. It's
Hmm.
everything you love about college football and more. I gotta say that.
Yeah. Well, not 5 minutes after you were saying They're probably going to ban this stuff because it's getting out of hand. You weren't even like saying they should ban it. You were just like they're going to. This is
They're
not going
going
to
to. I don't
fly.
think they
They're
should. I
going
just
to.
think they're going
Well,
to.
well, within 5 minutes of that, Twitter is just like inundated with they've got to ban this. This is getting out of hand. This
Oh,
has got to
really?
be
I didn't see
banned.
that.
Yeah, everybody's calling for it being banned. Like
I
right
don't
after you
think it
said that,
should
I'm like,
be. I think it's. I think it is what it is. But like,
yeah.
it's definitely
Well,
disrespectful. But
so
you
yeah,
gotta realize what's gonna happen when you disrespect somebody like that. Like,
yeah. So we're gonna pin that because I have some more stuff to say about that when we get into the Ohio State Michigan game, and that's coming up in
mhm.
just a few minutes. So, Tennessee Vanderbilt will move
I tried
on.
to call my shot.
The battle of Knoxville versus Nashville, and look, Tennessee went into Nashville and played Vanderbilt in Nashville better than anybody else has this year.
The We Beat Alabama Bowl. That's what that is.
Yes, that's right. That's right. This is the teams that beat Alabama Bowl. If only Oklahoma could have been there. Um, but yeah, so Tennessee gets it done 36-23. Tennessee punches their ticket for the college football playoff. It's just a matter of figuring out where they're going to be seated in this thing. But they were down early by 2 touchdowns. You
Mhm.
called a Vandy upset here,
I tried. I
and
wanted
you
it.
you started to feel it, and then Tennessee was just like, "No, not today."
I
Uh,
try to put myself out there on the line. Like I feel like you got to every now and then. Like I'm
mhm.
very prone to the Stephen A. Smith where it's like, oh well, they could, but I could easily see it also. I tried to
Mhm.
be firm and stand on business. But realistically, did Pavia not play some fuck you football? He still does.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
they lost, and Nico looked better. They definitely.
yeah.
I mean, shout out to him for like actually pulling them out of a two touchdown deficit early.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, shout out to Tennessee. There's your flowers. There you go. And
Yeah.
welcome to the college football playoff.
Tennessee's got some receivers,
Yeah,
and Dylan Sampson is still Dylan Sampson, and that O
he
line
sure is.
gets it done. And look, Tennessee's defense, I don't think gets enough credit. I know a lot of people talk about them, but I don't think people really give the respect of like this is not just like a good defense. This is like potentially one of the best defenses in the country, and they was it like a kickoff return early, and then like a busted play that got like a anyway. So the score, the 23 points, makes it look worse than it actually was, but Tennessee's defense actually like put their foot on Vanderbilt's
Hmm.
throat for like the last 3 quarters of that game. And
Yeah.
it's just one more way for me to remind all the Alabama fans, you lost to Vanderbilt. You lost to Vanderbilt. This team, and so now I'm looking at it, and Oklahoma won 2 SEC games this year. Vanderbilt won three.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Now Tennessee, we won't talk about how many they won, but Oklahoma and Vanderbilt won a combined 5 SEC games this year. And I think they won, well, Oklahoma won 0 SEC games last year because they weren't in the conference. Vanderbilt won one.
Hmm.
So a combined 6 SEC wins in the last 2 seasons, and 2 of them are against Alabama. That's where you are now, Alabama fans. You are in the neighborhood of just like being vulnerable to losing to the worst teams in the conference.
Yep.
And we don't care that you barely beat one of the worst teams in the conference in Auburn because they came into Tuscaloosa. You're playing for your lives. All they're doing is trying to play spoiler, and they're coming off of the high of playing spoiler in College Station last week, or not in College.
Mhm.
It was in Jordan Hare, but still against Texas A&M last week in that 4 overtime thriller. So you should have beaten Auburn by 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns like you have in Tuscaloosa the entire Nick Saban era, except for the Cam Newton year, which every team has their unicorn.
Yep.
This is just another indication. The fact that Auburn was like hanging around and this was kind of a game for a while just shows you where they are as a
Dude,
program
and that
compared to where they have been.
Alabama at
Coming
this
off
point,
of last week.
lives and dies with Jalen Milroe's athleticism.
Hmm.
3 rushing touchdowns and 104 rushing yards, 17 carries.
Yep.
226 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. This team lives and dies with Jalen Milroe's ability to run the ball, or lack of, or when he gets locked up by opposing
Yeah.
defenses. Peyton Thorne
Right.
still threw for 301 and a tud. He threw for a pick too.
Yep.
Jarquez Hunter's not bad. I will
I was
say
gonna
that.
say they were running the ball. I mean, people can run
Yeah,
the ball. That's the thing that's been the most glaring to me this whole time, and that's
Thorne
also
could
why.
too. They almost combined for 100 yards total, the two of them,
Yeah,
Hunter and Thorne.
yeah. So like the fact that teams have been able to run the ball, like the Oklahoma ran the ball for 260 last week.
Hmm.
Vanderbilt ran the ball down their throat and like iced the game. Vanderbilt ran the 4 minute offense on Alabama.
Yep.
That's that's what and this is what I want people to understand. Like what we're talking about is this isn't just like you turned the ball over 3 times and they got lucky and like the ball bounced wrong. Like no, they shoved it up your ass. Vanderbilt shoved it up your ass in the 4 minute offense.
Yeah, this is not the Ole Miss upset from 2015 where the ball
Right.
flies up in the air and oh my God,
Yeah.
he's got it. This is not that.
This is not that. This is like how you're this is where you are. And yes, I get it. We're where we are. I recognize that. I own that. I'm not sitting here saying like we're still great. We just had a bad year. Like no, this is the state of your program now. Your program is that and I'll say this too. When are you guys going to come to reckoning with the fact that you have literally had 2 runs with the 2 greatest coaches in the history of the sport. And other than that, you've been just like everybody else. Bear Bryant for whatever 25 years or however long it was, won 5 or 6 national championships. Then Nick Saban for 17 years and won 6 national championships. Everything else is a bunch of mediocrity with like the one Gene Stallings championship in like the 90s or whenever that was. Um, it has been 8-3, 8-4, 5-7, 4-6. I mean, 5-6, 4-7, mixed in with a 6-5 and a 10-1, and like you're just your standard SEC program type shit.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the same kind of stuff.
Georgia's done every single one of those numbers.
Everybody does
That's
this.
like that's
And
what.
and so like you're sitting here like it's the A and it's the state and it's the stadium and it's the this is that. No, you literally just have a dude who was coaching at Texas A&M, and I don't even remember the story of how you got Bear Bryant to come to Alabama, but you got him to come to Alabama. I wonder, and I hope for your sake that it's not the same kind of like fall bass backwards into a pile of money, like when you got Nick Saban, because that was the luckiest shit in the history of luck.
Isn't Bear
Um,
Bryant the first coach to allow black players on the Alabama football team? Am I
I,
making
yeah,
that up? You can cut
I
that
don't
if you
know.
want, but I'm pretty
I don't know.
sure.
It's
Maybe
possible.
not.
It's possible,
Maybe
but
not.
the point is like, so if Nick Saban doesn't go to the Dolphins and get fired for sucking right at the moment that Alabama desperately needs a head coach, what does Alabama look like if they don't get Nick Saban? If that doesn't happen in that moment, like at the perfect time for them, and what happens to them if he's at LSU instead? Like you have to realize how charmed your whole fandom has been and how blind ass lucky you are that a dude from West Virginia came to LSU, established a juggernaut in Baton Rouge, and then continued to pull talent out of Louisiana
Hmm.
to help you do what you did because of what he had built at LSU. Like you literally can't do what you did without us.
True.
So what I'm trying to tell you is now that you went and got your Pac 12 coach and brought him to the South, and you're realizing, like, hmm, this is just like when Saban, Saban lost to UL Monroe the first year. Yeah, because Alabama sucked when Saban took
He
over.
inherited nothing.
He inherited a horrible roster and a program that had gone through like 6 head coaches in 10
Hmm.
years and was like circling the drain. And he got you back because of what he had established in Baton Rouge and all those connections, starts pulling recruits out of Baton Rouge, out of New Orleans, out of Monroe, out of Shreveport, and then also corralled the stuff around Alabama and into Florida and Georgia and Mississippi, um, and then builds this juggernaut up. You are now right back where you were with the Mike DuBose, uh, Mike Sherman, whatever, what's his nuts? The Mike Shula. That's what I was thinking. Mike Shula. Mike Sherman was the Packers coach who was at A&M for a minute too. But anyway, I'm sorry. I get my maroon
It's okay.
weird non-red color teams mixed up. But anyway, um, yeah. So just enjoy this, Alabama. I don't know if they're gonna find a way to shoehorn you into the playoff or not
They're
because
gonna
they just
try.
like they're gonna try
They're
really
gonna
hard
try.
because they believe in that BS logo
I think
and
that Greg Sankey will not allow it. Also, by the way,
yeah.
Bear Bryant is credited with integrating the University of Alabama football team in 1970.
Hmm.
1970.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So
1970.
yeah,
Not
1970.
1960. 1970. We're just gonna leave.
Right. Like, kicking and screaming, and that's one of the things I've always also wondered is like
I'm sorry.
how,
I took it a
how
different way, but it's true.
it's
He
like
did do it.
it's yeah, and that's what one of the things I'm always like, man, like imagine being like, yeah, that's right, I want to go to Alabama where they were like the last school in the country to integrate, and they
Yep.
like literally had like they had stuff on TV and everything of like this girl trying to go to school, and they're like, get the fuck out
Yeah.
of
I'm telling you, that's
here.
what I mean.
Like,
Nick
no,
Saban
dude.
revolutionized Alabama in 2008, and Paul Bear Bryant had the genius idea of maybe everybody can play football, and maybe
Yeah,
we'll win.
maybe not just the white people can play.
What? Maybe.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
I'm sorry, everybody, but it's the truth. All
oh.
right,
Hey,
moving
look,
on.
man, Gump's gonna gump. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, Tulane, Memphis.
Oh, I know you
This
wanted
was
this for
one.
them. You called
Tulane
this
had a
one too.
chance. Tulane had a chance to be that other Power Five or a Group of Five conference team to oust the Big 12.
Hmm.
But it ain't happening now because even if Tulane beats Army or if Army beats Tulane, I don't think either one of them has enough wind behind the sails to actually get
Army needed that
into
one
that.
over Notre Dame if they wanted
Yeah,
anything.
yep. And Tulane just they coughed it up and literally coughed it up. I don't know if you watched
Yeah.
that game, but
No.
they had multiple plays where they took deep shots. The dude catches the ball, he's in the red zone, stripped and fumbled. Like
Ah.
the receiver catches the ball, takes 3 steps, fumbles,
Ah.
turns the ball over multiple times.
Mm.
And then they had another one where, like, on a
No
running
good.
play, like the dude
Can't have
fumbled.
that.
It's like, yeah, no, you cannot have that and expect to win. And it was like it was right there for them. They could have iced it right there, and then you go beat Army, and you're in the playoff most likely because
Hmm.
the Big 12, they would have had their work cut out for them for sure. Now, one team that still has some work to do, but really got it done. Shout out to Ashton Janty, another 200. He
Is
just
his
keeps the
Heisman
train
back?
running.
Is he back?
I
I
mean,
mean,
unfortunately, Travis Hunter also put up like 3 touchdowns and
and a
had a
pick, I
pick.
think.
Yeah, he had a pick and 3 touchdowns. So like he only had 100 yards, but it's just so funny too because like so Ashton Janty, the equivalent of what Ashton Janty has had to face is like if they were triple teaming Travis Hunter on every play,
Hmm.
and he was still going for like 103 touchdowns. But
Yeah.
no, he's doing it against man to man coverage.
Yep.
It's like maybe they'll
He's
bracket every now and
26.
then.
Jesus
Maybe there'll
Christ.
be a safety over the top that he's got to, work underneath. But the other thing is too, like Shador Sanders is running around, giving him 12 seconds to get open too.
Yeah,
Um,
Shador Sanders, honestly, like if the season falls a
Mhm.
different way, I think Shador Sanders, like he need Travis Hunter, if he wins the Heisman, needs to share it with Shador Sanders.
Sure, for
Let's
sure.
be for
Yeah,
real. That kid
yeah.
is
Well,
good.
they were both in the running last
For
year, if
sure.
you remember. They were in
I
the
think
conversation at least.
I think that Shador will end as a top 5 finalist when all is said and done,
Yeah,
possibly when all is said and done.
maybe. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah, you still got Dylan Gabriel. So you got Janty, Gabriel, Hunter, and then Cam Ward, and then yeah, I don't know who else would be in that top five. I mean, why not Shador? It's who else would it be?
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers? No.
No.
Um,
Not Carson Beck, that's for damn sure.
nobody from Ohio State or Penn State or maybe Cam Scatteroo. We'll get into him in a minute,
Yeah, we will.
but yeah. So Colorado. 52-0. And the other thing is too, Travis Hunter, I think it was like 30-something-0, and Travis Hunter had like 40 yards and a touchdown. And so they kind of piled it on. And then, granted, that's what Heisman Trophy winners do. LSU did it with Jaden Daniels last year because he was in a real, dogfight with what's his face? Patrick or Bo Nix. What you got?
So Ashton Genty in the Mountain West Championship just has to rush for 341 yards and he gets Barry's record.
Okay. All right. So you're saying there's a chance.
You're saying. Still,
I have a feeling UNLV is going to have different plans.
Dude, that's going to be a great game. One of the best group of 5 championships this week is going to be that game. Anyway, Colorado blanks Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and they're still throwing to Travis Hunter up by like 40.
Of course,
in that game. So it's like, you gotta pad the stats when you can. But it is what it is. Like, you gotta recognize that that's what was going on. Now, we went through all those other games because I was kind of going in chronological order. I had this one way deeper in the list because I did not expect it to go this way.
Me neither. No,
but Michigan
didn't even know what happened. I was driving and I couldn't even believe that I was listening to South Carolina-Clemson because I was like, well, for the first time ever, I'm like, yeah, Ohio State's gonna boat race Michigan next, and we move on. Like, completely in the shoe. Like, I barely watched. I'll be honest with everybody. Like, I barely watched any of this game because I thought it was just that's it. Like, Chad, do you want to tell the people what happened?
Will Howard and I can't even remember Michigan's quarterback's name. But they were just taking turns throwing the ball back to each other. It was disgusting. I have never seen a worse display of quarterback. I mean, it is the Big Ten, so you kind of expect terrible quarterback play. I'm sorry, I got to take my shots because I've been hearing about how, like, when a team like Michigan, like Florida, for instance, beats Ole Miss, I'm told, oh, this is because the SEC is not good. Florida's not good, so therefore Ole Miss must not be good. LSU must not be good because they lost to Florida. Okay, well then I guess Ohio State's not good because you lost to Michigan at home. You didn't go to the swamp and lose to Florida. You lost at home to Florida.
Yep.
Explain yourselves.
Bro, the Michigan quarterback throws for 62 yards and 2 picks, and they win the game. Insane. And is Donovan Edwards just not their feature back anymore? Khalil Mullings, excuse me.
Yeah, but it's not even. They didn't even run the ball that well. Like,
no,
it was the most
yards.
It was the most disgusting. It was the most Big Ten game I've seen.
Quinshon Judkins. Why would you let them buy you? You could have been contending for the college football playoff,
bro.
If they have Judkins on that team, and you got Parrish,
between Quinshon Judkins and Ollie Gordon, I don't know which one of them made the worst decision in the offseason. Ollie Gordon to come back to Oklahoma State, or Quinshon Judkins to
should have sprinted to the NFL, and he did not have his draft stock.
Judkins should have just stayed at Ole Miss. He'd have done better. He'd have had more. Like, stage to kind of, like, showcase his talents. It's not like they couldn't have used him because, like, Ulysses Bentley is good, but he hasn't been, like, insane.
Yeah,
and then that Parrish kid got hurt, and he was doing okay, but he wasn't. I mean, Judkins was like a dog. He would have
been their feature back this year still. Well, that's all. That's his fault, not ours. And they lay an egg at home against a terrible terrible Michigan team. Terrible.
All right, so I'll say this. All right, so let's walk it back a little bit. Let's not be like our Big Ten counterparts. Okay? We're gonna be realistic when we look at this stuff. Okay.
You're right.
Right? I'm going to, because I gotta show you this, because this is not. I even was guilty of this for a minute. Okay, that I was talking about Michigan as though they were just this terrible team, that their schedule was mediocre, blah, blah, blah. Michigan has the 7th toughest schedule in college football this year.
All right.
So, and look, they even put a Georgia picture on this screen here. So here's what you got. Fresno State, all right, whatever. They lost to Texas, okay? Granted, it was at home, but still, Texas is one of the best teams in the country. They beat Arkansas State. They beat USC. They beat Minnesota. They lost to Washington. That's not great. They lost to Illinois. Wait, is this? Hang on. Yeah, this is Michigan. All right. They lost to Illinois, beat Michigan State. They lost to Oregon, Indiana, and then beat Ohio State. So like if you look at their schedule, they have Texas, Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State.
All
Four
right.
top 10 teams. So the fact that they escaped this schedule with a 7-5 record is they're not terrible. They're kind of in that
Hands up
um
accountability. That's on me. But
yeah,
still.
yeah. No. It's all good. Like they're still not they're still not like a great team. And this is definitely a team that Ohio State, if Ohio State is who we're led to believe they are, um, that Ohio State should have beaten. Now, the reason I'm bringing all this stuff up is because I can recognize what role rivalry plays and what role like a lot of these things that can narrow the gap, can even the playing field do. um whether it's weather or a crowd playing on the road, and also in this instance a rivalry even when you're playing at home, and that psychological factor similar to what LSU and Georgia had to deal with Alabama, where Alabama is not what Alabama has been. However, for LSU and Georgia, there's like this PTSD of we've been like getting our ass kicked for a decade now, and we still piss down our leg because for whatever reason we don't come with the let's go for the jugular and let's go kill them. Instead, we're trying to play. And that's what I felt like what I saw Ryan Day do in this game was call the game as though he was afraid to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Running the ball up the middle, like open your offense up, like let your athletes go do their thing.
They
What are
have
you
all of
afraid
them.
of?
They have so many
Yeah,
talented guys. They have
you
the most
bought this
talented
massive
roster.
roster for you to run the ball right up the t and Michigan's strength is up the middle on defense.
Michigan's strength is their defense.
Yeah.
Like, that's where Michigan's strength still lies in the defense.
So yeah, so this is one of those classic games of you never know what goes into these rivalries psychologically, everything else, all the different things, the adrenaline, everything. Like, it's all the stuff that we talked about, but combined with the fact that like on the other side, you've got a coach who is 1-4 against this team.
And that's what you measure Ohio State coaches. That's one of their measuring sticks,
Mhm.
Still in the modern day of football, like, strength against, record against rivals, like depending on
Yep.
the team matters, sometimes doesn't matter. This coaching position, beating Michigan matters the most. Like this is
Yep.
where that is one of your check marks. What
Yep.
have you done in the national scale and what's your record against Michigan?
Hmm.
Like those are the two things that matter the most if you're an Ohio State head coach.
Yeah, you want to get fired? Don't beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Or in the opposite case, if you're Michigan, don't beat Ohio State.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so I want to be, I don't want to be like these Ohio State people who like I really feel like what it is they don't watch enough football to actually have respect for the other stuff that goes on around the country. And that's why they're just like, well, I don't even understand why is this a rivalry? Like, oh well, because there's stuff that happens outside of like the Midwest and the Northeast, and the West Coast. I know y'all the like that's foreign to people who grew up with that stuff being like that's where all the media is and that's where all the hype is. But yeah, there's actually stuff that goes on in other places of the country, and I recognize that this is a huge rivalry, and that even when a Michigan team like this is not that good, there's still enough talent on that roster, and there's enough hatred, and there's enough trepidation on the other side of the field with Ryan Day that I could kind of see this one coming. I, I definitely did not expect it like as like a yeah, I think that's going to happen,
No, I
but it
didn't. This is
was
not one of the ones I
it
thought
was in
was
the, it was in the realm of
there.
possibility.
Like
Certainly in the realm.
I mean, it's always in the realm of possibility, but like
Mhm.
the likelihood level is different. Like at any point in time, prime example, Georgia Tech comes in and almost trounces us
Mhm.
at Athens. Like
Mhm.
no statistical reason why they should do that other than they did
Right.
almost did. But just like from an optic standpoint, and Ohio State's only loss being a barn burner out in Eugene, There was
Mhm.
nothing to say, "Oh, Michigan is gonna come in and keep it close."
Right. Yeah,
That
after what they did to Indiana last week,
right.
it was just like, "Oh, yeah, this is
It's like that was
foregone
their
conclusion."
that was yeah, like, on their list of games, Michigan was kind of farther down there on compared to the previous games they played.
Right. Right,
Like,
right. So now the question is gonna be, like, how does this shake out when we're gonna get the rankings Tuesday night,
mhm,
but those are not the final rankings. The final
nope.
rankings will come out after this weekend when the conference championship games are done, and so, it's hard for me to imagine unless Penn State beats Oregon, and then you would have 3 teams that could potentially be, no, I think yeah, you could have 3 teams that would be ahead of Ohio State because do you put a 2-loss Ohio State above Indiana with 1 loss just because of the head-to-head?
Mm.
Maybe you do. I don't know, but I think Penn State with 1 loss definitely if especially if Penn State wins the Big Ten,
Dude, that'd be
they're
massive.
first round bye, and then
That
you can't
validates
you
their entire season.
then you have to have Oregon ahead of Ohio State too.
You
So
do.
then it is the third place Big Ten team then, which Ohio State could be at that point. Are they definitely going on the round
Penn
one?
State can muck up the entire system if
Oh,
they
for
beat
sure.
Oregon. Like, I'm so excited, like, now that we have, like, this championship weekend is shaped up to be pretty awesome because now you have Clemson SMU, and we'll talk about
Mhm.
it. You have, like, just some great, great matchups that we get to now have this coming weekend.
So yeah, we can talk about this in a little bit more depth, but I was just thinking Penn State, like Ohio State may have screwed Penn State out of a home game by losing to Michigan because
Mm,
now Penn State is either getting a first round bye by winning the Big Ten, or they might get kicked to the ninth, 10th, 11th seed with a loss to Oregon,
and then the
which would
head-to-head
which
against
would
Ohio
make
State.
them have to go on the road.
Yeah,
So Happy Valley could have had a home playoff game, and now they
had
could
Ohio
be.
State just won.
And yeah, had Ohio State just won, they were guaranteed a home playoff game,
Oh, that's a good
and
point. Well, I guess
and
we'll
now
see.
and now they're either going to get a bye
However,
or they might be playing on the road.
if that TV show that Jeremiah talks about is real, which I think it
Hmm.
is, you
Yeah.
could see Penn State somehow sneak in a home game just for the atmosphere.
Now we're definitely getting a home game at Neyland Stadium, which is going to be wild.
That's gonna be oh, that's true.
And then I think you guys are either getting a bye or you're going on the road.
Yeah, which is yeah,
There's no way
we'll
you're
see.
playing in Athens.
No,
Athens is not happening. Um, and then yeah, the rest of it we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, so about that Penn State, they had this game with Maryland. I don't know if anybody thought there was really a chance that Maryland could
no,
beat them, but Penn
not at
State
home.
put them away early. That was a whiteout, wasn't it?
I don't know. Not
Did they
not
white out this one, or they white
no, they
out? Maybe
winded out
they white
Washington.
out last week.
They winded out Washington.
Washington. Okay, yeah, yeah. All right, all right.
This was, in College Park, stuff can get a little crazy, but this was
Yeah.
never. And I just think it's funny too because I think they were already playing their game, I believe, before
Hmm.
the Ohio State Michigan game concluded.
Yeah.
So Franklin was like, "Hey," expressed the team. It's like, "I know we're supposed to have off tomorrow, but now we have to practice because we're playing the Big Ten championship."
Right. Right. And there was actually a big thing with apparently the Maryland coach got mad at James Franklin
Loxley,
for running up the score on him. And he's
yeah,
like, look, I'm putting my threes and fours in there, but they're gonna play. They're gonna play football. Like
yeah,
they're trying to score.
no, and
And if you're running
Loxley,
cover zero, I'm throwing the ball. Because like that's
Lo-
what we do. Like that's
yeah,
what you like
I've,
I'm not just gonna
mhm,
run the ball right into like I didn't put those guys out there to have them not get
mhm.
experience and play the game.
Yeah, that's
Like,
And I heard Loxley's a good guy. My dad was actually college teammates with Loxley, the head coach of
mhm,
Maryland. Like he's a
yeah.
apparently a good dude. And I mean, he's trying to make things happen at a program which doesn't get the most high profile. It's like you get the best out of Maryland, and PG County, Maryland, is one of the hottest like conglomerates of football. Like that's where like
Mhm.
Diggs is from, and all of them are from. Like it's, but it is what when you're in the Big Ten, it's just tough. You know what I mean? I feel
Yeah.
like they would have been better off in staying in the ACC way back when.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and the I don't know. I'm always torn on this thing with the blowing teams out. Like I do think there's sometimes where
But Kirby's the
pe-
same way.
people
We're
are
gonna put our backups in, but if they
yeah
whoop on y'all, that's not our problem.
right. But and so the thing so there's always that they're not all created equal. So sometimes blowing a team out for the sake of blowing them out, leaving your ones in the fourth quarter
Yeah.
when you're up by 5 touchdowns, 6, 7 touchdowns, and just running it up for the sake. Spurrier used to do that, where he would leave Werfel and those guys out there and
Hmm.
just try to hang 70 on you. And that's one thing. The other thing is like when you have your actual, you put your threes and fours in, and your competition is out there still running their starters out there because like Maryland was still they were still trying to score. They were trying to do
Yep.
stuff. Like you want to wave the white flag, cool. We'll lay down our arms and call it a day. But if you're gonna keep if you're gonna keep trying to score, we're gonna keep trying to score too.
Right.
So
Yeah. The Penn
because
State.
they're playing for seeding in the playoff.
Yeah.
They're not guaranteed to win the Big Ten. If they lose the Big Ten, they've got to
They.
show like style points
Yeah,
to
for
maybe get a home
sure.
game.
They
All this
took
kind of
out.
stuff.
They took out Drew Aller, Singleton, and Katron. They took out all those
Hmm.
guys. Like, and
Hmm.
they had freshman running backs in, and they had Prbula playing quarterback. Like,
Right. Yeah. So now moving along,
ah,
Notre Dame USC.
all right.
This score makes it look like Notre Dame just pulled
They had
away
the pick at
and
the end, pick six right at the buzzer.
bro, USC is about to tie the game.
Hmm.
And this dude throws like if he puts a little bit more on it over the top, it's a touchdown, or at the very least it's incomplete. And he underthrows it, and the dude picks it. And I mean, shout out to the kid for like keeping his balance and staying
Yeah,
upright to get
a
because
hundred
if he
yard pick
doesn't
six.
run it back for a touchdown, it's still a game, and they're like inside their 10 trying
Hmm.
to like salt it away before they have to punt. But
Yep.
the way it goes is he not only does he pick it off and stall their drive out, but he takes it the other way. So it makes it look like this game Notre Dame could have lost this game. That's the point
Yep.
I was getting at.
And
Notre
it
Dame
said
could have lost this
USC.
game,
Yeah,
and they win by 2 touchdowns. So Notre Dame has solidified their spot as the number 5 seed. I think
they
they
would
are
be
going
number
to
five behind the conference. They're going to
they're
have
going
to
to
be.
have yeah they're going to have the home game in South Bend, and who has to go there is going to be the
I hope
question.
it's us.
And then yeah, and then who's that 4 seed? Is that 4 seed going to be Boise State? Is it going to be maybe an Arizona State or Iowa State out of the Big
Hmm.
12? Because if Boise State loses to UNLV, then that's a possibility. And then it starts to bring like Tulane and Army into the fold of like maybe they jump UNLV. I don't know. It's going to get crazy this weekend. We're going to just have to wait and see. But Notre Dame has solidified themselves as a home game in the first round as the number 5 seed, most likely. And that's, man, how far we have come from that loss to Northern Illinois at home. But
Seriously,
it is what it is. Notre Dame, I thought they were a fraud. They proved to not be a fraud.
I wanted them to be, but they're not.
But you know who is a fraud? Miami.
Hmm.
Because you were 10.5 point favorites at
We called this.
at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. We called this one. I told you, be careful. This is not going to be easy. And you called it. Holy cow! Like, guys, like if you were, so we have this group chat. Me, Tyler, Drew, and Jeremiah, our two Ohio State
That
guys.
was before the game
Um,
started. I think I sent
Before
that
the game
text.
started, Tyler says it would be the most Ryan Day thing possible if Michigan beats Ohio State and then Kyle McCord beats Miami for Syracuse. And I'll be damned if that didn't happen because Syracuse overcame a 21-point deficit. They were down 3 touchdowns. Miami was like, it's over. We're not a fraud. We're good. Look at us. Blah, blah. You have lost to two unranked teams and you don't have any wins that like to me, this is just me. If I'm on the committee, there is no way in hell Miami makes this field over South Carolina.
They can't. They shouldn't.
How like what's their win? What? Give me Miami's signature win this year.
No,
They
yeah,
have none. They have
have
no
none.
signature win. Virginia Tech, Cal, Duke, Louisville. Louisville's probably about it. That's about the best they can muster. Is they beat Louisville.
It's
Like
I
that's their win.
shout out, yeah. I was just like screwing. I was messing around when I said that because I was like, well, I I felt that Cuse could beat Miami, but
Hmm.
the Ohio State Michigan was not even on my radar. But shout out Kyle McCord, dude. The tweet is all time. Just tweeting Clemson football. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So
Oh
much.
God. The worst part is though, Clemson still lost.
Yeah,
So it's
Clemson.
like it's like this very like they're like you can hear the truck beeping as it's backing its way into the ACC championship games. Like beep,
Yeah,
beep.
right.
Like, get out the way. This guy can't see. Um, oh my gosh. Oh,
Oh my
oh.
god. Yeah, that was. I
So
mean, shout out to me for at least I was right about something this weekend. Good
yeah,
lord.
that's right. So Miami is a fraud, like we told y'all. We told y'all weeks ago when they lost to Georgia Tech. No, it was before they lost to Georgia Tech. We told you they were a fraud.
It was
Then
when they
after
were.
that,
It's when they barely escaped Louisville. Is when
yes.
we called it.
Then when they lost to Georgia Tech, we were like, we told you they were a
I
fraud.
mean,
And then y'all
people
still
do have.
argued with me.
People
Y'all
might have a
still
hard
argued
time with
with me.
Georgia Tech. Let's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Georgia Tech might be a good team. Everybody,
I
let's.
know. Hey, but you didn't lose, did you?
No, we didn't.
And I'll say this too. Like, yes, you had a hard time with Georgia Tech, but it was nowhere near as ugly as what
No,
Miami did. Like Miami
they
got
got beat
handled
down.
by Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's a very different animal there. Um, and so you came back and argued with us after we called him a fraud after the Georgia Tech loss. You were still wrong because this happened. Syracuse, you lost to Syracuse.
which
Granted,
I feel
it's
like
in the Carrier
Syracuse.
Dome, and
Yeah,
Syracuse isn't that bad. And they had that one game against Pitt where McCord threw like 8 pick sixes or
right.
something.
Like Syracuse should be higher up in the ACC rankings. They just
Should
kind
be
of
better,
they should be
but they
better.
aren't.
They're not.
And it is what it is.
Hmm.
But you know who is in the ACC championship game? The Pony Express.
Hmm.
SMU
Can't say
just
nothing to them.
getting it done. Yeah.
Cannot. We tried. We put them
Hmm.
on. Hey, gotta win these, and they sure did. Like, there's
Right.
nothing we can. Good for them. Hey, I think SMU. Well, if we're being honest, I think like Clemson was played their way out of the ACC championship and then right back into it. So I think
Yeah.
Clemson. I think Clemson realistically. I don't know. I don't know if it's Clemson or Miami. It's hard to say what should or shouldn't be the case there, but we have our ACC championship set regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So should Miami be in there? I guess like they're better than Clemson,
But they're not
maybe.
better than SMU.
Are they though? Are they? But are they even? Are we sure that they're better than Clemson though? Let's
I
be
don't
real
know.
about that.
I don't know.
Clemson, Clemson has a loss to South Carolina and a loss to Georgia,
Yeah.
and then sandwiched in there they have one ACC loss. Okay, Miami has no wins against anybody good.
They had Florida when they played Florida when they
They
sucked.
played Florida when Florida was terrible with Graham Mertz was quarterback and Florida played like crap. Nowhere near the Florida that's playing now. Um, they barely beat Virginia Tech, barely beat Duke. And granted, I know they pulled away from Duke, but that game was like tight.
Hmm.
And then
Barely
they
beat
pulled away
Cal.
late. They had to scrap their way to come back from like down 3 touchdowns against Cal. They were down like 10 points or 2 touchdowns to Virginia Tech. They should have lost to Louisville and squeaked that one out. But now you did lose to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, so I don't want to hear it anymore. Miami's out of there. Give me SMU. Give me the Pony Express with that 38-9 win over Cal. Um,
Absolutely.
and I don't know what I'm rooting for. If I'm rooting for Clemson to win the ACC to make it even more chaotic,
I mean,
and
validate
possibly
Darwin
have
over them.
SMU still get in. It's like, would SMU still get in with only two
But
losses? I don't
Clemson
know.
winning the ACC should validate South Carolina and us even more, if we're being honest.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. That's what I'm saying. It's like you have to look at all this stuff
like, we
in
beat
the
them by
full
30.
context. Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
now, Big 12. championship
Holy
is going to
shit,
have
the
Arizona
final
State
score.
because they
Good
took
lord.
they took Arizona to the woodshed, 49-7. And look, Cam Scatabo, I think he had 177 and 3 touchdowns. He's like
Jesus Christ.
he's like the white Ashton Jeanty. Um, he's like this, but he's like a Swiss Army knife. They put him at quarterback, and they put him at like tight end. They put him at
Mhm.
running back. They do like everything with him. He only had one catch for 8 yards, but he was like running wildcat, and it's just he's kind of like the like Tyler Warren.
That's exactly
Um,
what I was gonna say.
yeah,
That's what he sounds like.
yeah, yeah, where he's kind of like d- do whatever they need. And so Arizona State is in the Big 12 championship. They will be playing against Iowa State, who knocked off Kansas State 29-21. And that's so like now you have these Big 12 teams to where we were talking just last week about how if things go a certain way in the Big 12, you could actually have like a Tulane or an Army surpass them. If Tulane were to win the American, you could actually have the Big 12 champion not even make the tournament.
Mhm.
And now it doesn't look like that's going to be the case because actually, like two of the best teams in the Big 12 have actually risen to the top, and Arizona State and Iowa State will be playing each other. They'll probably both be in the top 15 when that matchup occurs, and so I don't see any of the other Group of Five conferences having a better ranking than them. So they'll get in by virtue of that being the fifth best conference champion behind Boise State or UNLV, because UNLV knocked off Nevada, setting up that Mountain West conference championship with Boise State, 38-14. They just kind of took care of business. This time we will get it right. This is a game that featured Hajj Malik Williams, not the other one that we did a few weeks back. Uh,
You never
but
know.
yeah, but
They don't
nobody
know.
knows. We deleted that part of it. But anyway, now you know, but you don't because we could be lying. But yeah, so BYU beating Houston didn't really matter because BYU still
That
won't make
sucks for
the.
them too. They played
Yeah.
their way out of not even being able to win the
Well,
game. Like, it's so funny. Like they held two different teams' fates in their hands, and neither one of it was their own team.
neither one of them was themselves, even though they would have been tied with either of those two teams.
Right.
So if Houston had beaten BYU, Colorado would be playing for the Big 12
Mhm.
championship. But instead, BYU beat Houston 30-18. And now it's Arizona State, Iowa State, and Colorado is on the outside looking in. And Colorado's hopes of getting into the playoff are gone as well,
Mhm.
in spite of that 52-0 win. Um, so another big blowout win was in the Big Ten. Indiana
Woo!
just beat the doors off of the worst team in college football, Purdue. I say that, kind of tongue in cheek, but Purdue is really like they're probably bottom 10. They have
Pretty
beaten no one, and they've gotten blown out by everyone. Their one win, they're 1-11 now, and their
oh,
one
good
win is
lord.
against South Dakota, not South Dakota
Jesus.
State, South Dakota, who's like 4-7 in
No,
FCS.
their only win is Indiana State. Shout out Larry Bird.
Indiana State. Who was it that who played South Dakota? Somebody else. Maybe Indiana State
I think
has a win
Oklahoma
against
played
South
South
Dakota.
Dakota. No, they played South Dakota State. Oklahoma
Yeah, I
State
don't know.
played.
Anyway,
Yes,
Indiana State's
Indiana
bad
State.
too, though.
Shout out Larry Bird.
So let's look. Can you do me a favor? Look up Indiana State's record in
Yes,
FCS
I can do that. It's gonna take
because
me a
it's
second.
bad.
Give me a second. I gotta. I mean, I can only imagine. Indiana State is trying to get. Wait, what? It says. Oh, that's why it's screwing me up. It says only 0-1 in the. Okay, hold on. Oh, it was like 0-1. They played one game. They canceled the program after that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Here we coming. We're coming around. Indiana State Sycamores. Once again, shout out to Larry Bird.
Yes, exactly.
They
This is why we don't let
are
Tyler
four and
pull up
eight. They
four
are
and eight.
four and
Yeah,
eight
they're 4-8 in FCS, and
against. They
that's
beat
Purdue's lone
Dayton
victory.
and lost to Eastern Illinois, and they lost to Houston Christian and Youngstown State. They beat Murray State, lost to Missouri State in Southern. Yeah, my point. My point. Yeah, the point remains.
Yes, the point stands. Purdue's terrible. Um, this is well. Anyway, they are not as good as Kentucky or Mississippi State or Arkansas. The bottom of the Big Ten is like and there's six deep of teams, not quite as bad as Purdue, but pretty bad. and they're all roughly worse than the bottom four teams of the SEC. Um, Oregon, Washington, number one Oregon wins 49-21. This is a big rivalry game for these two teams, especially here recently where it's been a quality rivalry
Hmm.
versus necessarily like and I mean these states do neighbor each other, so it's big in that regard too. They have some history together, but it's really been big the last few years because both
Hmm.
schools have had pretty good programs. Washington is taking a big step back because they lost a bunch of dudes to the draft, especially like when you lose a quarterback who's a Heisman Trophy candidate, it's always going to be tough. Hey, we're seeing that this year at LSU. You lose Jaden Daniels, and even though Garrett Nussmeier is good, he ain't Jaden Daniels. So Michael Penix not there anymore. Oregon takes care of business, so that sets up that matchup with Penn State kind of this weekend for the Big Ten championship. And look, we're going to get into that. We're going to wait and see what the college football rankings for the playoff setup are Tuesday night. Then we're going to come back, go over all the different ramifications. There's five really good matchups, and three of those five matchups are basically like winning you're in, losing you're out
Hmm.
games. Boise State UNLV is winning you're in, losing you're out. Most likely UNLV may still not get in if they win, but they're probably in if they win. Um, the Arizona State Iowa State Big 12 championship is absolutely winning you're in,
Yep.
losing you're out. Um, and then what was the other one? Oh, the ACC.
You
Um,
think SMU loses
yeah,
and they're out?
I think so. I
I
think
know
I think if
Clemson
SMU,
loses, they're out for
I think
sure.
Clemson loses, they're definitely out. If SMU loses, I think, look, man, you're going to be hard pressed with two losses when you're coming at it because and we'll have to see what the actual rankings are. If SMU has moved up to seventh or eighth and they're like ahead of Ohio State or some craziness like that, I don't know. I still think if they lose, they're going to find every excuse they can to bring Alabama, Ole Miss, maybe
Yeah.
even hopefully at least South Carolina, and I think they probably even give Miami a look at that point.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty fair. They're gonna Alabama's just gonna be hoping for all the chaotic things to possibly happen this weekend.
Hmm.
We'll have
Hmm.
to see where they rank. If they rank Alabama 13, you know what they're doing. They're just gonna set them
Yeah.
aside and see
Yeah.
what comes about. You know what I
What's
mean?
going to be the real telltale is where do they have South Carolina? If they have
Hmm.
South Carolina ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss, or if it's like Ole Miss, South Carolina, then Alabama, or anything like that, if Alabama is second or third in that
Yeah,
pecking order, or and if South Carolina is first or second, Ole Miss is first or second, then that's starting to let you know, okay, where they are. The way that this thing is set up is whoever is because none of those three teams is playing. Okay.
right.
So whatever that order is, it's not changing.
Hmm.
There's nothing they can do to change. Now, if the committee just randomly decides, like, oh, well, damn, it actually looks like uh, Georgia's better than and Alabama beat Georgia. So I guess that makes Alabama better. Well, yeah, but shit, Ole Miss beat Alabama better than beat Georgia better than Alabama did.
They did. They did.
So how can you not have like if Georgia wins the SEC and beats the doors off of Texas, I could see if they have it Alabama, Ole Miss, I could see them flipping those two
You could see
because
what Ole Miss getting in over Bama or Bama getting over Ole Miss.
I could see them flipping Ole Miss over Bama, but by
Yeah,
virtue of the fact that you took the best team in the conference and you beat them by two touchdowns, um, versus like having a nail biter that you won by uh, would they beat y'all by a touchdown?
yeah,
Or
yes.
3 points,
No, yeah,
three
it wasn't.
points,
It was 4 points, I think.
4 points. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because y'all would have kicked the field goal at the end instead of
Yes.
throwing a pick.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Thanks.
I'm sorry. It is what it is. Like
It
I'm
is,
just saying,
yeah.
you wouldn't have been throwing the
Oh,
ball
I
and
know.
putting it at
I'm
risk with
messing with
that.
you.
Um, but
Yeah,
but
those
yeah,
interceptions
so
will get you.
so where they rank these teams is going to tell us everything we need to know because the rankings of the teams that are playing this weekend is going to tell us a little bit about where they could fall if they lose and where they could move up if they win.
Hmm.
But the rankings of the teams that aren't playing this weekend is going to tell us where those teams are going to end up when the dust settles, because there's going to be that line, that little queue of teams that are ready to move in to those spots in case
Yep.
somebody falls out. And
It's
the
really good
order that
setting them
you're in,
aside.
yeah, the order that you're in is like you're standing there at the butcher counter with your little ticket. It's like number 13, number 13. All right, I got it. I'm in.
Yeah, literally.
So
It's like true
it's
though.
like that. Like
It's true though.
you're literally waiting for them to finish cutting up that ham for that old lady, because you may or may not get your stuff done before Gretchen gets off of her shift, and now you have to let Kyle, and he has like 3 fingers missing, so you might get a finger in your hand. Um, so you definitely want Gretchen to be slicing your roast beef.
God
So
damn.
anyway.
Analogy's gone on for too long.
I know once it started, I was like, I gotta carry this all the way through.
It's accurate though. Like they're literally like, okay, we'll wait in line or wait our turn, I guess.
Yeah,
Single
that's right.
file
That's
line,
right.
everybody.
Yeah. So it's a lot of excitement. It was a really fun weekend, and I'm looking forward to another really fun weekend coming up. And then we get to see what does the bowl system, what does bowl season look like with the playoff? Is it going to be depressing, or is it still going to be cool and fun like it used to be? And that's the one thing I'll say. Like, I definitely think the the notion that the regular season has been less exciting, less meaningful this year versus other years has been proven to be absolutely preposterous.
Yep.
Like, okay, yeah, does one game or another, like, okay, does the Michigan Ohio State game hold less overall weight in terms of like if Michigan, I mean, if Ohio State wins that game, they're probably like guaranteed a spot in a 14 playoff versus they lost it and they would be out of the 14 playoff
This would
now.
be a boring 4-team college playoff.
It would
If
be
it
it would
was
be
four
horrible.
teams, it
It'd
would
be
be boring.
it'd be
It'd be
so
horrible
stupid.
because so much infighting and so much like cannibalization of each other, especially within the SEC, Big 12
Hmm.
alone, has
Hmm.
screwed the whole season up to where like
And
it
the
would have been
ACC
like
too. Like the
that's what
ACC
I
a
mean.
little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been
But the
like
but the big
four.
but the Big 12 and the SEC have definitely been the ones that have had the most parity.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily just because those conferences are just not, they don't have elite talent. I think it's just really hard when you have like 10 teams that could
Hmm.
legitimately compete for conference championships in any other conference, that they're going to beat up on each other. It is
Yes.
just natural. And
Hmm.
the reason why Texas is where they are is because Texas played what would be the equivalent of the Big Ten schedule this year.
Yeah, they played the
All the
SEC
worst, all
East
the
and
worst
Mississippi State.
teams. Yeah, they played all the worst teams in the SEC, and so that's why they only have one loss.
Hmm.
They have the one loss against the one team in the top 5 of the SEC that they played, and they have a win against a team that is like in the next 5.
And they get to come to Georgia Second Stadium, or
Hmm.
that we rent out every
That's
year
right.
for.
That's right. That's right. Um, but yeah, so like that parity, it would be a really dumb 14 playoff. But what I
Oh,
was
it'd
going to
be
say is
stupid.
the fact that like that game doesn't mean what it would have meant. And that maybe like the Texas A&M game wasn't just a let, because in a 14 playoff era, all Texas A&M would have been playing for Saturday night was spoiler, because they
Yep.
would not have been. Well, no, I take that back. They would have been. It was the setup for Texas A&M was still the same, because if you win and you get into the SEC championship, then you could still win the SEC championship and get into the. But were they? No, because they weren't actually really doing that. I think actually, no, you're right. Yeah,
I don't think so.
your space of consternation is correct. Because I think, yes, I think you're right. I think that A&M would have just been playing spoiler, because even if they win the SEC, you probably are
It
looking
just
at a
ruins our
SEC
chances more.
list. You're
Right.
looking at an SEC list playoff, a 14
Yes,
playoff.
you are looking at Oregon, Penn State, and like
Indiana,
Indiana, maybe. And it'd be like Oregon. It'd be maybe
it would
Oregon,
be
Penn
horrible.
State, the ACC champ. And yeah, it'd be
Yes,
terrible. Like
it'd be
it'd be
terrible.
gross.
And you would, yeah, and you would. And the stupidest part about it is you would probably have 5 teams better than everybody but Oregon
Right.
actually still in that
Could you
thing.
imagine like the way that Tennessee's season has gone to not let them in? Could you imagine SMU season the way it's gone to let them in? Clemson,
Hmm.
regardless of how they've done to let in. Now you have once again the conversation comes between 13 and 15
Yeah.
as
Yep.
opposed to then you're shoehorning nonsense essentially in this
Well,
14
and
playoff.
and look, let's be real about what has happened with the 4 spot, or the 3-4 spot in the 14 playoff. What has routinely happened is there are like 2, 3, sometimes 4 teams that
Mhm.
could put up a fight in that tournament if they were
Yep,
allowed in, and they're
exactly.
kept out. And then a team like TCU that gets beat by 70 points in the national championship is let in. And that TCU team beat a Michigan team the week before, and maybe in a 12-team playoff, that Michigan team might not have gotten out of the first round.
Yeah, let me tell you. You know what a 14 playoff would be this year? It'd be Oregon, Notre Dame, Penn
Oh
State,
yeah,
and the
Notre Dame.
ACC champion. That's exactly what that would be.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's because that was how they would have to keep it.
You
Like
said Tennessee and the ACC champ.
no, Oregon, Penn
Hmm.
State, Notre Dame, and the ACC champion. Maybe,
Oh, Penn State and
yeah,
ACC champ. Yeah. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know because
Not even
if
Penn State,
if
maybe.
if no, because if Clemson wins the ACC champ ain't in there either.
Then who?
That's what
Jesus.
I'm
Then who?
saying. Like it's got to be
Like,
Tennessee at that point.
yeah, it might.
Tennessee's
It might just be.
Tennessee's got one loss. No, they got 2. They lost to you guys too. I forgot about that. Okay,
Well,
so they lost
no,
to
it'd be
Arkansas
Texas. Or
and
we,
Georgia,
well, if Georgia
or
beat
or or
Texas,
it's
then
Texas.
Texas,
Yeah,
yeah.
if Texas would win, then Texas would be
It'd
in
be
there.
Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, and
Penn State.
Penn State. Yeah,
But
gross.
if Penn State loses this weekend, no.
Yeah, and then Texas loses, then they're all right. You know what?
Yeah,
We're gonna stop talking about
it would
horrible
have been such a
scenarios.
no. I'm telling you, it would have been such a it would be so idiotic, and you'd be
Yeah,
like, "There's no way you should be able. There should only be 4 teams in this thing because
yep,
clearly there should be like at least 9." You know.
yeah. Like,
So thank God they did it the way they did it, and the whole point I was trying to make is that like yes, like you can point to this game or that game and be like, well, this game didn't have the season ending implications that it would have had in a 14 playoff. Okay, yeah. And some other games wouldn't have had season ending implications that they would have had in the BCS era where there were only 2
right, but
teams.
you're talking about
That
literally like
doesn't mean that it's better to do that. That
after,
to me that makes it worse. There were 15 games this weekend
bro.
that were massively important
Yes, after week 5, you're talking about like 3 to 4 teams playing meaningful football in a 14
every
playoff.
single week, week in,
Yes,
week out. And
but
I'm not
after
talking about just like if you lose to some crap team, you stub your toe and now you've gotten eliminated. I'm talking about like the 2 teams that are playing are both playing for their path to the playoff.
mhm,
And this
yeah,
weekend, you have 3, possibly 4 of those kinds of matchups.
yep,
Oregon and Penn State is probably the one that's the least consequential,
yes.
and it's still very consequential
Yeah,
because
because if Oregon loses, then it's a whole bunch of different craziness.
it's Penn State playing for a first round bye or playing on the road in the first round.
Yep.
That's the difference. Okay, that's a huge delta. It's Oregon playing for the number 1 overall seed
Yes.
versus playing as like the 6th seed at
As a
home
home
against
game.
like Tennessee or something,
Mhm. Yeah.
or Georgia, or
Right.
like it's very important, and
Yeah,
that's
you're
not even and that's the least important one.
right. It's your
That's
path to the play. The path within the bracket is massive. It changes so much depending on your seeding.
hmm
Like, yeah,
hmm
Oregon locking up undefeated number 1 is massive for them. Penn State locking up a bye is also massive for them. And that you said that's just like the
right,
tip of the iceberg. Then you
right.
get to us in Texas, you get to SMU Clemson, you get to the big we'll talk about it all, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
If you've been sticking around this much, we appreciate you. We love you. Chad, do you have anything else for anybody else before we go out of here?
Just to like, to share, to comment, to subscribe like you've been
Yes,
doing all year.
sir.
And just never forget that Miami is a fraud. Okay, that's number 1. So first of all, Miami is a fraud. Number 2, Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, and I lost my glasses. That's how bad it is. I'm so fired up. Uh, and with that, I am Chad. He is Tyler. The South End Zone is out of here. We'll catch y'all later in the week with the preview of championship weekend. Peace.
Peace.